I'm Natelle Williams, a women's occasion wear designer and founder of the Natelle Williams brand. Welcome to my personal diary, a safe space for us to talk about business, fashion, life, and everything in between. I'm on a journey to build my brand, and if you're listening to this, I'm glad to have you here. Fashion for me has been a passion, as cliche as it sounds. It really has been a passion since I was really small. I used to, go out with my grandmother, and she was a church lady. She's passed on now. Um, but she was a church lady. She would always dress impeccably. She was a popular lady, so she was always invited to weddings, any kind of church events. She would be there, conventions, and she would always dress like the queen. Is the she was a queen in her own right. So she just looked well put together every time she stepped out of the house, and she was of the generation where you had your Sunday best, and that was pristine. Everything was starch was strong enough to hold for 20 years, even through multiple wash cycles. It was, everything just looked proper, well put together, well dressed lady, well presented. And I spent a lot of time with her growing up. She always had a lot of fabrics in her home. She was always making curtains, or asking someone to make curtains. So it was very it was kind of subconsciously there in the background. And although she didn't teach me to sew, looking back, that was a massive influence for me. Just being out and about with her as a child. After school, she would pick me up from primary school often, and we'd always be in and out of clothes shops and things like that. So that was a big thing. I think that's really where it started. And as I got older and I became more conscious of my style and what I wanted that to look like, and my body, and certain things grew, and I got boobs and I got hips, and not that they're the biggest now, but my body was changing, and I started to notice things, and I wanted things to fit me a little bit differently, so I started to take things in, and the hems got a little bit shorter and things like that, and I learned how to do certain things for myself. And it was actually my mom that bought me my first little sewing machine. It was really small, it was really diddy, it was about this big, it was only small, and I guess she saw something in me. I must have been around 11, I'm going to say 11 years old, and she said, I think this is something you could do. You seem to enjoy it, so here's a little sewing machine. And at the time I was like, oh well, I wasn't too interested, which is crazy now. I took it, and I think maybe I tried to use it a couple of times, but I wasn't really doing much with it. And she said to me over the years, when I was a teenager living at home, why don't you do a sewing course? Or you could do, at this point now, I think maybe I'd done my main courses at college. It wasn't anything to do with fashion. I think I did dance, law. At one point I wanted to be a lawyer. English and ICT. Those are the subjects I chose at university college. And she said, after I finished college, she said, but you're still, she always saw it in me, you're still, doing little bits with your clothes. Why don't you do like an adult course at a college somewhere? And again, I wasn't really, taking it that seriously. It was just something I was doing for fun. Fast forward to, so I taught myself to sew, essentially. It was all self-taught. I would, YouTube things, I would just trial and error and test things. So then I moved on from just shortening things and taking things in to making some things from scratch. And yeah, that's what I did. So I taught myself to sew. Fast forward to 2021, post-COVID. I think that was a big time for everybody. In terms of thinking about what you want to do with your life. Am I happy? Am I living in the way that I would want to live? If, God forbid, this illness took my life, would I be able to say I've lived the life that I wanted to live? And I mean, I'm not complaining, my life was great, but I did think to myself, I don't think this is what I'm doing at the moment is really what's driving me as a passion. I don't think it's what I'm passionate about to the point that, you know, I'm waking up in the night thinking about it. And even if I was, it wasn't because I was just so passionate about it and this was what was at the forefront of my mind because I couldn't turn it off. It was more, yeah, did I respond to that email or something like that? But I wanted to focus on what my true passions were. One second. My microphone fell. But yeah, I wanted to focus on what my true passions were. And that was creativity and fashion. So I did enroll on a fashion course. It was more so the theory and fashion history. It wasn't really, it was called a postgraduate diploma, but it wasn't. That wasn't what it was. And I didn't get the level of sewing experience that I wanted to from that course. So it was still a lot of self-taught. You know, we were showing a few things in class, but it wasn't to the level that I wanted at that stage, because now at this point I was thinking about, okay, I want to turn this into a career. So again, it was still a lot of, you know, now I had a bit more knowledge and I had a bit more on the theory side, which was great because I also wanted that, but I still felt like because I taught myself I was still lacking in that area, and I needed to I'm a perfectionist anyway. I needed to perfect that skill, and it was that year that I said I'm going to stop buying clothes. I'm only going to make what I want to wear, and that's what I did. So I stopped buying clothes in 2021, and I said anything that I want that's brand new that I can't, you know, upcycle or whatever for my existing wardrobe, I need to make it. And that is how I really honed in on my sewing skills, and that is how I really upped my sewing game. You know, so I worked and stayed home a lot from that time until now, really. Just practicing, making patterns, making garments and testing and sketching and fashion research and market research and all of these things. Everything's been building up until this moment, really. And somewhere along the way, 2024, it was the summer of 2024, I met a tailor, a fantastic tailor, who I have been working with one day a week, and he is well seasoned. He's a menswear specifically. He works with men mainly. He has done other bits previously, but he's a very, very good classically trained tailor, and he's been helping me just, you know, perfect those finishings, because really and truly, once you know how to sew, once you've done a few pieces and you can work out, you know, how to construct garments, and you've done your research and whatnot, it's the finishings that are going to set you apart from the high street or from other people. And that is what I knew, and that is what I really, really wanted to perfect. And it was that I felt I needed to really upskill that part of my work. And, you know, I mean, can anyone ever stop learning? I don't think so. But now I'm at a point where I feel like, yes, I have graduated to that level where I'm proud to say I can do these things and do them well. So, yeah, but I'm always learning. I'm a student of life. I am such a geek at heart, really and truly. I spend my days listening to history podcasts. And learning is fun for me, genuinely. It really is. I can never learn enough. I hope I'm always learning. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I know everything. I could never know everything. I will never know everything about sewing. I will never know everything about fashion. I will never know everything about, you know, garment construction. I will never know everything about business. It's just impossible. So I love to learn. I love to learn new things. I love people who can teach me new things. I love to help where I can, but I love to learn. So yeah, that's my background in terms of, you know, how fashion came into it, how I learned to sew, a lot of just work, a lot of weekends in the house, to the point my friends used to say to me, you know, what do you do? What do you do on weekends when we don't see you? Which between 2021 and now, that was, you know, obviously 2020 was just a crazy year for everybody because COVID struck and everyone was in the house anyway. Everyone was on lockdown. So, but after that, when people were outside, it was like, well, we're not seeing you. What are you doing? You know, what are you doing? But I was working, I was grinding, I was perfecting my craft because I knew I wasn't going to get to the level that I wanted to be at without that hard work, dedication, sorry, and that consistent work, that work rate. And even now, there's so much, I feel like I'm going to be talking forever, but there's so much that happened, but that's the thing that stayed consistent. I would just, you know, unless I had an event on and I really cut down on what I was doing, unless it was going to, of course, friends and family, you've got to keep those ties. I'm also very, you know, friends and family orientated, but unless it was something important or something that was kind of in line with what I was doing and where I was going as a person, I really kind of cut back on the social side of things, because I just knew I had to get to where I wanted to be and to get to the level I wanted to be at. I had to do that. I had to make that sacrifice. There was just no other way it was going to work. So yeah, that's the career background. I could go a whole lot deeper. I will go a whole lot deeper at some point, because there's a whole story as to how I ended up leaving my corporate job and how I actually started the business, which I will tell right after I get a drink break because I'm